Hello, Trinity family. This is Pastor Dewar, and this is your Theology in 3. I wanted to talk about one of the most boring passages in all of Scripture today. And when I'm done, it's my hope that you would see this not as the most boring passage in all of Scripture, but potentially one of the most exciting passages in all of Scripture. I would like to read for you Matthew chapter 1, and this is how it goes. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Abinadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, Abijah the father of Asa, Asa the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Jeroam, Jeroam the father of Uzziah, Uzziah the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, Ahaz the father of Hezekiah, Hezekiah the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amon, Amon the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jehoiakim and his brothers at the time of the exile to Babylon. After the years of Babylon, Jehoiakim was the father of Shealtiel, Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel the father of Abihud, Abihud the father of Eliakim, Eliakim the father of Azor, Azor the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Akim, Akim the father of Elihud, Elihud the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who was called the Messiah. If you're like me, and I know I am, whenever I see genealogy, I tend to just skip it and just keep on reading after the list of names, because a list of names is really boring and really tedious to read. You just heard me do it. That was not fun. That was boring. And here is the thing: if we see the text as simply a list of names, it is boring. But that's not what Matthew is doing when he puts it at the very front end of the New Testament. In fact, the very first thing you read when you're done reading the Old Testament, if you're just reading through in order, and the very first thing you read is this genealogy. And here's what this is doing, and here's why this is super important and interesting. Matthew is saying, hey, you remember all the stories of the Old Testament? You remember how God interacted with his people throughout the Old Testament stories? Do you remember those stories? Those stories are all pointing you to Jesus. In fact, as you read through the genealogy, what he's inviting you to do is to pause at each of those names and to think back. Abraham. Who is Abraham? Oh, that was in Genesis when God made a promise to him and gave him a land and this great nation and all these people that are coming after him. And he promised him that he would be a blessing to all the nations of the earth. And then you keep reading, you read about Judah, and you see that he is made a promise that one of his descendants would be king. And we see, as we go through it further, we see Ruth. And we see Ruth, the example of faithfulness, as she, a foreign woman, had this tremendous faith in God. And then you continue on and you see David, the mighty king, who not only slew a giant when he was but a boy, but also that God made to him a promise that his descendant would reign on the throne forever. And then we see the list of kings and the highs and the lows, and we could spend time going through the book of the kings and see how those were both awesome and terrible times as well. And then we follow through until finally we get to Jesus. And what this is doing is it's inviting us to pay attention to the lineage of Jesus. It's inviting us to pay attention to the reality that God's promises come to his people, that he has been making promises to his people for thousands of years. And so when Matthew introduces Jesus, it's not as just some guy. It's as the guy who's been promised from the beginning. If you go all the way back through the genealogy, you can see the entire history of God's people and his relationship with them. And so, when you read the genealogy, don't treat it like a list of names. Instead, treat it like a list of stories. That as you read through, you remember God's faithfulness to his people and the blessings that they've received through him. I pray that you have a blessed rest of your day. And as you read the scripture, be curious. Ask questions.